We were trained to be bad readers. As kids, we were told to finish every book, never write in it, and read one at a time. But top performers approach nonfiction very differently. I've collected 7 unconventional reading rules over the years. Stuff school never taught us but should have. Part 1. Concepts. Let's talk about reading goals for a moment. There's an idea online that gets repeated so often it starts to feel true. The more books you read in a year, the more successful you must be. For years, articles have claimed that the average CEO reads 52 books a year. Around the same time, reading challenges started showing up everywhere, encouraging people to do the same. The message behind all of this is clear. If you're not reading as many books as others, you're falling behind. It's easy to buy into that logic. If the average CEO reads 52 books a year, then reading 100 must make you even better. On paper, it sounds convincing. In reality, it usually backfires. With this mindset, one of 2 things tends to happen. Either books pile up on your desk while guilt piles up in your head, or you push through dozens of books and barely remember anything by the end of the year. Top performers prefer not to play this game. They don't count how many books they read because it's a vanity metric. It's easy to track, it looks impressive, and it's perfect for sharing on social media. But it's also superficial. It makes you feel productive without creating real impact. What's the point of speed reading or consuming as many books as possible if you don't act on what you read? In that case, it's almost as if you haven't read at all. Top performers focus on understanding ideas and extracting concepts that genuinely change how they think and act. One idea you truly apply is worth more than 100 books you barely remember. What helped me let go of the goal of reading a large number of books was keeping my reading goals intentionally small, reading 1 to 5 books a year. That shift changed the focus from finishing books to pulling out a few powerful ideas and using them throughout the year. Part 2. Timing. This is where most people get it wrong. They read the right books, just at the wrong time. Their choices are kind of random. Whatever sounds interesting, whatever gets recommended, whatever shows up on a list. And that's how you end up stuck in a learning loop. One book leads to another. You keep consuming information, hoping that this one will finally make something click. But most of the time, reading like this is closer to entertainment than real education. It feels productive, sure, but if you're honest, very little actually changes. Top performers use a different loop. They're much more intentional readers. They don't start with learning just for the sake of learning. They start with doing, and then they read when they actually need it. They pick books they can apply right away in a real situation they're dealing with. There's a simple reason this works so well. Action locks ideas into your mind. Practice is one of the most effective ways to learn. According to the learning pyramid, at best you'll remember about 10% of what you read. But when you actually do the thing, retention can jump to around 75%. That's a huge difference. Reading with a clear use case also changes how you pay attention. If you're starting a business, you naturally read a sales or marketing book differently. You're not reading passively. You're hunting for ideas you can use immediately. The same goes for negotiation. If you're preparing for a salary conversation, that's the perfect moment to read a negotiation book. Pull out a few key concepts and apply them right away. Part 3. Blog archive. We were taught that a book has to be read from start to finish. If you don't, it feels like it doesn't count, like you somehow cheated. And then there's the fear of missing out. What if I skip the best idea? What if something important shows up later? This is what gets so many people stuck. They stay on the same book for weeks, they don't move on, they don't apply anything, and nothing really changes. Here's the thing that's easy to forget. Most books could be much shorter, especially business and self-help books. A lot of the time, there's just one strong idea, stretched across hundreds of pages. That's why top performers read differently. They rarely go from page 1 to the end. They skip boring chapters, they start in the middle. Sometimes they jump straight to the end. And if a book isn't useful or interesting, they drop it and move on. You're not better or worse for reading the books you're supposed to read or for reading them the right way. Honestly, no one is keeping score. That said, getting comfortable with skipping is one of the hardest habits to build, mostly because of guilt. I paid for this book. so I should finish it. This is where something Naval Ravikant said really clicked for me. He talks about treating books like a blog archive. Think about how you actually read a blog. You don't read every post ever written. You scan the titles, see what's relevant to you right now, and maybe read 3 articles out of 400. Books work the same way. And once you see them like that, skipping around starts to feel completely normal. Part 4, Marginalia. Now, let's talk about note-taking. Most of us were taught that writing in books, or even folding a page, is basically a crime. So we learned to keep books clean, even our own books. Maybe some of us rebel a little and underline a few sentences. But that's usually where it stops. The problem is this trains us to be very passive readers. But writing in a book with your own hand is actually one of the best things you can do as a reader. There's an old practice called Marginalia. It simply means writing your thoughts in the margins as you read. Little comments, questions, disagreements, doodles, anything that helps you think on the page. Some of the smartest people ever did this. Mark Twain filled his books with notes. Isaac Newton did the same. Edgar Allan Poe cared so much that he would even check the margins before buying a book, just to make sure there was enough space to think. They ruined their books. And that was exactly the point. Because they weren't just readers, they were thinkers. They didn't treat reading as passively absorbing ideas. They treated it like a conversation with the author, questioning claims, pushing back, forming their own opinions. And this is where something shifts. You stop being just the reader. You become the writer, too. Writing in books leaves a trace. It shows that a book was actually lived with, not just consumed. Full ownership only happens when a book becomes part of you. A simple habit made this obvious to me. Every time I return to a book, I use a different ink color. Over time, you can see how your thinking evolves. And having that evidence right there in the margins is surprisingly powerful. Part 5, Public Notes. Now let's talk about the next level of note-taking, or more specifically, where your notes should live. There are tons of guides about this, what app to use, how to organize notes, how to make them searchable later. And none of that is wrong. But almost all of that advice assumes one thing. Your notes are private, they're just for you. I want to suggest a different approach, one that's more effective. Make your notes public. If you pay attention, a lot of top performers are already doing this. They share small insights on social media, a lesson they learned, a simple framework, an aha moment. It's basically note-taking in public. And the real value isn't the likes. It's what the process forces you to do. First, it forces you to decide what's actually worth sharing. When notes are private, it's easy to write everything down. When they're public, you become more selective. You start looking for the gold. Second, it forces you to distill the idea into your own words, often into just a few sentences. And that's what good note-taking really is. Understanding something well enough to explain it simply. And then there's the part that feels uncomfortable at first. People respond, some disagree, some poke holes in it, but others add perspectives you hadn't considered. And that pulls you back into the idea. You refine it, you rethink it, you engage with it again. Public note-taking keeps ideas alive. Part 6, Parallel Lines. Let's talk about something that feels a bit wrong at first. You don't have to read one book at a time. Actually, reading several books at the same time is often better. I like to think of it as reading in parallel lines. Maybe it's 3 books, maybe it's 10. There aren't really rules here, but there are 2 main reasons this works so well. The first has to do with how learning actually sticks. There's a concept called spaced repetition. The idea is simple. Studying 1 hour a day for 7 days works much better than cramming 7 hours into a single day, especially if you care about remembering things long term. When you read one book straight through and then move on to the next, your learning happens in tight, isolated chunks. One topic, then another. There's very little time for anything to really settle. In contrast, when you read multiple books at the same time, each book naturally stretches over a longer period, and that's actually a good thing. Every time you pick a book up again, you're forced to return to the ideas. Your brain gets more chances to revisit them, strengthen the connections, and move them into long-term memory. The second reason is more subtle but just as powerful. Knowledge isn't linear, it's a network. Ideas connect in ways you can't always predict. And this is where parallel reading gives you a real advantage. When you're reading multiple books, especially from different fields, the learning starts to overlap. An idea from one book bumps into something you read somewhere else. Patterns start to show up. You notice similarities, contrasts, unexpected connections. Some people can do this while reading one book at a time, but for most of us, thinking in networks doesn't come naturally. Reading multiple books at the same time forces you to do it, and that's what really improves your thinking. Part 7. Play on repeat. Most people read a great book once and then move on. Top performers tend to do the opposite. They come back. Instead of constantly starting new books, they reread the ones that actually mattered, the ones that proved their value. Kind of like a favorite song. You don't listen to it once and say, got it. You play it again and again until you know every word. This is where the leverage is. They double down on what works. Because not all books are equal. If you're honest, most are pretty average. They recycle ideas you've already heard before. A small number actually change how you think and act, and those are the ones worth coming back to. Rereading a proven book gives you far more return than constantly chasing new ones you're not even sure are good. And there's another reason this works so well. You almost never catch everything on the first read anyway. I like to think of each pass as adding another layer. The first time through, you're mostly at the surface. You pick up the obvious insights, the ones almost everyone notices. But there's more underneath. When you read the book again, new ideas start to surface. By the third or fourth read, you begin to notice things you completely missed before. Small connections, hidden assumptions, subtle nuances. It's a bit like diving into the ocean looking for treasure. You have to go to the bottom to find it.